Hello everyone, my name is Muhammad Idham Agung P, and in this video I would like to tell you about how I translate three assignments of theory and practice of translation. So since the beginning of the class, I already translate Bendi Bugis to English from Indonesian, and then translating Memorandum of Understanding from English to Indonesian, and the third one is translating an essay of someone identity from Indonesian to English. These three texts have their own characteristic that distinguish between each other. The first one is Bendi Bugis. Bendi Bugis is very rich with local or vernacular terms that can be a little bit difficult to translate. And then the MOU is using law language that has its own terms and not so easy to understand by the common people. And then there is an essay of someone identity that use narrative language. All of the different characteristics makes all of these texts are different to translate between each other. For example, I cannot translate Bendi Bugis using the same technique as I translate the Memorandum of Understanding and vice versa, because it will cause a mistranslation. Regarding the techniques, there are 7 techniques in translation. They are borrowing, calque, literal translation, transposition, modulation, equivalence or reformulation, and adaptation. Method is also need to be considered while translating a text. There are 8 types of translation methods. The first one is word-for-word translation, literal translation, faithful translation, semantic translation, adaptive translation, free translation, idiomatic translation, and communicative translation. So when we translating a text, we cannot just merely use one techniques or one methods. In this occasion, I combine some of the techniques and the methods that I think very suitable for the text. In Bendi Bugis, for example, I use borrowing technique the most. The reason is because there are some vernacular terms that cannot be translated directly to English or to Indonesian. So borrowing is a translation technique that involves using the same word or expression in original text in the target text. The words or expression borrowed is usually right in italics. And then in translating Memorandum of Understanding, I mostly use literal translation along with borrowing techniques and adaptation. So literal translation means a word-for-word translation, achieving a text in the target language, which is as correct as it is idiomatic. However, since the text contains some of terms that only available in the law field, I need to find the closest meanings from the source language to the target language, and this is called adaptation. And then, when I was translating the last text, which is about an essay of a student profile, I used the technique literal translation and some transposition. This last text is a narrative text and talks about a profile of students from one particular university. Since there are no vernacular terms, idioms, or any difficult terms to translate, I can just use literal translation to translate this essay. How, however, however, the original author of this text wrote the text with some grammatical errors. So I need to involve transposition since this technique is involving or moving from one grammatical category to another without altering the meaning of the text. And then we come to the analysis part. The first text is Bendi Bugis. The source or language of this text is Indonesian, and I will translate it to English. This text is talking about the history and the glorious time of mass transportation in Minangkabau at that time, and it's called Bendi and Bugis. Bendi Bugis is also a children literature, so we also need to consider that the result of the translation should be easy to understand by the children. Just from reading the title, I already know what technique that I will use to translate this text, and it is borrowing technique. I can say like that because if we see the title, Bendi and Bugis, there is no direct translation from Bendi and Bugis to English language. This is happened because those words are vernacular terms that only used by the Minangkabau people. Just like the word jinx, or it means the people or an object that brings a bad luck in English, it cannot be translated directly to Indonesian language because it is an English terms. And borrowing technique is the solution for this kind of problem in translation. But before I can apply the technique of borrowing, I need to find the meaning of bendi and boogie itself. According to Kamus Besar Bahasa Indonesia, bendi is a two-wheeler cart that being pulled by a horse. While according to the text of bendi boogie, boogie means the older version of bendi. Based on first definition, I finally have a depiction about what bendi is. Then I found something similar to bendi in English language, and I found it is called horse cart. Maybe you are wondering why we cannot just translate bendi directly to a horse cart. So, in translation, we must also consider the sense of the source language when we translate it to target language. So we cannot eliminate the sense of a word from the source language itself. This is why bendi cannot be translated directly to horse cart, because the sense of Minangkabones will missing. And it is different if we translate a normal word, such as in Indonesian we have a word called mobil, and when we translate to English it will be a car. We can just translate like that because the sense of mobile will remain the same if we just translate it directly to a car in English. And then we come to the second text. The second text is about Memorandum of Understanding, or MOU. So, Memorandum of Understanding is a document that describes the broad outlines of an agreement between two or more parties that have reached. The source language of this text is English, and the target language is Indonesian language. And in this text, the parties that involved is Action for Enterprise, or AFE Kumar, and Alpha Company. Both of these two parties are going to make an agreement, and to describe that outlines, they use the Memorandum of Understanding. Just like the previous text, bendi and boogie, I can tell that I am going to use borrowing techniques and adaptation to translate this text. This has happened because the MOU itself is a term that only used in the law field, and not all common people knows about it. To translate the phrase Memorandum of Understanding, I need to find the definition of the MOU itself first. Just like I tell you before, MOU is a document that describes the broad outlines of an agreement that two or more parties have reached. And since the MOU cannot be translated directly into Indonesian language, I need to find the adaptation of MOU in Indonesian language. And the adaptation of MOU in Indonesian is called Nota Kesepahaman. I also use borrowing techniques to translate this text. However, the reason is not the same with just like in the previous text. The reason is because it is a company name or a name and it cannot be translated. The words that cannot be translated in this MOU is Action for Enterprise, or AFE Kumar, and Alpha Company. We cannot translate those two names because it is a company name. Just like in case Microsoft, we cannot translate Microsoft to another language because it is name. And for that, I use borrowing techniques. And the last text that I already translated in this class is about a student profile that is written in the form of an essay. So the source language is Indonesian language and the target language is English language. This text talks about a student profile that wants to propose a scholarship. It is basically explains her life, her academic life, and this text mostly serves using narrative language. Since this is an essay of a profile or a story of student's life, I can just use literal translation to translate the text. However, the author of the original text made some grammatical and punctuation errors, so it's forcing me to use transposition technique to correct the grammatical errors. Transposition technique is moving from one grammatical category to another without altering the meaning of the text. So, for example, I pick this example from the original text. Nama saya Nur Arifah Tufani, lahir di Muaro Pulau Karang, Ampang Bulai, Kecamatan Kotol 11, Tarusan, Kabupaten Pesisir Selatan. Saya lahir pada tanggal 21 Januari tahun 2000. So, there are some punctuation errors in the sentence above. The writers wrote it in one sentence, while it is supposed to be separated into two sentences. So, if I apply the transposition technique, the result will be like this. My name is Nur Arifah Tufani, born in Moro Pulau Karang Ampang Pulai, Poto 11, Subdistrict Sisir Selatan District. Full stop. I was born at January 21st, 2000. So it will become 2 sentences. And then conclusion. From these 3 texts that I already translated, I learned that we must use different techniques and strategy to translate different kind of text. Not all text can be translated using the same technique as other texts. We need to carefully choose what kind of strategy and what kind of technique that is the best to translate that text. This is important to elicit mistranslation, misinterpretation, and misunderstanding on translating the text. I think that's all from me. Thank you for watching and catch you on the next time.